Hey everyone, this is Ashley Schmidt here, and I am going to talk to you again today about U.S. Service Academies and basically how to get in, application tips. This is a series, so if you're just catching this one, then go back and check out my playlist for getting into Service Academies and tips. All right, so I'm going to do this one a little different. I'm going to actually talk to PowerPoint and you get to see me. The reason I wanted to do it this way is I wanted to reinforce what I'm talking about with actual words. Instead of just looking at me, you get to look at some words. And in the military, you kind of get used to PowerPoint, so you might as well get used to it now. There will be PowerPoint presentations in your future. All right, so let's get going. The first one is I want to talk to you about the application pieces. So here's kind of the application pieces in a nutshell, just kind of the overview. You've got the SAT portion, the grades, that sort of stuff as test scores. You've got a personal profile and paperwork items. This I'm kind of throwing into that whole, all the different forms, filling out your name, your basic information, kind of all that stuff. Okay? There's also like a resume included in with that as well, like your candidate activities and that sort of thing, and we'll talk a little bit about that too. Okay, transcripts, schedule, high school counselor, you might need to do a senior schedule, you definitely have to turn in your previous transcripts. Some require a letter of recommendation for your high school counselor, so that's kind of this piece part. Various forms. There's lots of forms. Each academy has forms you have to fill out, drug forms or forms of understanding or just paperwork forms type stuff. The CFA, so the Candidate Fitness Assessment, essays, letters of recommendation, there's an interview, there's DODMER, that medical piece. And then the other thing you may not know, or hopefully you do know, or maybe you're not completely aware of, is that you have to not only apply to the academy, but there is a nomination piece. And there's various ways to get nominations. The two most likely sources, which actually is three, is 2 senator applications and 1 congressman. So that's 3 sources that are pretty much available to everyone. There are some other ones like there's a JRTC honors. If you're in an honors JRTC unit, there's one for that. There's a vice presidential, which I recommend that you do as well. It's part of the application for the academy, so you just do that as part of the application. And then also the presidential. The presidential, there's also POWs. There's a few other things, but in general, the sources you're going to apply to are your congressional, senatorial, and vice presidential. The most important of those is your congressman. That is your, what I always call, the least competitive slate. You're competing against the least amount of people. You're only competing against those within your congressional district, whereas your senator, that's your whole entire state, and then even if you go into the larger pool, that's like the whole country, right? So the congressman is definitely one that you want to pay attention to. You want to pay attention to all the piece parts, but that's definitely something you don't just want to leave till the last minute. You really want to look at that. All right, something you also may not know is that the ROTC scholarships, they kind of expect that you apply to these, and so you should pick at least one to apply to. And heck, it's a great fallback plan. You can get pretty much a full ride scholarship or very close to that if you make one of these scholarships. It is a great, fantastic option, and definitely you should apply. And they actually expect that you're going to apply to one of these ROTC scholarships. So look into that, not just the academies. Look into the scholarships that you would be most interested in. All right, so one of the tips I want to say is start to gather information early. I don't know where you are in the process. Maybe you're really early, you're freshman or something like that, or even earlier, or maybe you're scrambling right now to do this. But either way, start as early as you can. You want to look into all the deadlines for all the academies, the timelines, the deadlines. You want to look in the timelines and deadlines for all your congressmen and senators. You can find this by just going online and looking. Generally, it's under constituent services, or maybe it's under service academies or students or something like that. So just look on the websites and find out the deadlines. Find out if they have academy days where they explain their application process. Those are great if you can go to them, or if they have virtual events or whatever, or if they're at your school, any of that sort of thing is great information. So definitely pay attention and get online and look at those deadlines. Even if you can find out last year's deadlines, that's helpful because you know that they changed deadlines slightly, but if it was 1 October the year before, it's probably going to be about 1 October every single year. Now, you definitely want to check, but that gives you an idea of what to expect and when to expect it, and start creating like a timeline for yourself. Do not wait until the last, timelines for ROTC scholarships. You definitely want to look into those too. They open pretty early, the ROTC scholarships. Generally, they open before the academies, so you can get those started on right away once they open, and maybe get that done before your academy application. So that's definitely something you should look into so that you don't have to do everything all at once. That if you're trying to do this all in September of your senior year, it is a very busy and frantic time frame. So if you can get anything done, like the April kind of things will open for ROTC sometimes of your junior year, if you can get it done then versus your senior year, you're going to be much better off. And the last thing is, don't wait for the last second to turn anything in. They are very, very, very strict on deadlines. And a lot of this stuff is, not everything, some is postmarked and some is turn in and that sort of thing. But a lot of it is online. What if you decide to turn in at 11 p.m. and it's due at midnight and the internet goes down, their server goes down? You are absolutely out of luck. Do not wait till the last second. Even if it's 2 days early, like 2 days before the deadline, that's better than waiting till that midnight deadline. But earlier is obviously better. The earlier you can get anything in, months ahead of time, a month ahead of time, that's good. But don't wait till the last second. I've seen so many students who just turned it in the last second and a computer glitch, like they hit enter but nothing happened. So don't be that kid. All right, next one. So in this one, I also wanted to talk about, we're going to talk about the personal profile, some paperwork items, the transcripts and counselors a little bit more, and the various forms. I don't have a whole slide on the various forms because it's just fill out the forms. That's it on that. Okay, so my basic overview of tips for all that sort of stuff is read the directions all the way through. Do not overthink it. Follow the directions. And I really want to foot stamp this because students say, oh, well, it says only 2 letters of recommend. Maybe I should turn in 3. No, turn in 2. Unless somewhere it says, hey, you are welcome to turn in other letters of recommend, or please send in your resume, or you get an email from them requesting that sort of thing. Don't add things. Don't put things, if you're wondering, you can email and ask, but if it's not in the directions, don't oversubmit. Don't put things that they don't ask for, because they'll look at you and they'll look at your application and think, can this kid follow directions? It's clearly stated what we want. So you can actually get negative thoughts, shall we say, for not following directions. So follow the directions. Read them. If you have a question, please email your counselor, the contacts they give you, but follow the directions. Don't overthink this. Just follow the directions. Use a word processor. Okay, so use Word, use Google, use something. Type it out, and then spell check it and put it into the form. Don't type directly into the form. I've seen so many things that you could totally tell nobody read this. They just kind of typed it into the form and hit enter. Please don't do that. Actually type it into a word processor. Spell check it, grammar check it, that sort of thing. And you think, oh, this won't be me. Well, it's a lot more students than you think, so don't be that student. Yes, spell check. Grammar check too. I'm going to foot stomp this. I'm sorry, I saw so many spelling errors that could easily be fixed by just spell checking. So spell check and grammar check it. There's so many free things online. Look for something free. Ask somebody. Whatever. Just do it. Don't think, oh, I'm too smart. I shouldn't do this. Another thing too is word count. Really check and double check your word count or character count, depending on what is there and required. Don't submit over. Sometimes if you submit one, it depends on the form. Some don't accept more characters than you have, so it'll cut things off. But others, they get kind of mad if you don't have the right word count. So look at the word count, look at the character count. Make sure it is within the guidelines, whatever they state. Double check this. Double check spelling, double check grammar, right before, and word count, right before you submit it. Because I've seen so many kids who said, oh, I spell checked it. Well, they spell checked it 2 versions ago. And so now they have an error after they change something. Spell check, grammar check, word count, right before you enter it. Have someone else read it, please. Have several someone else's read it, please. No matter how many times you read it, there will be errors. And remember that you have like this idea in your head that you're trying to communicate. The reader, listener, they don't have all the background that is in your head, right? They don't hear your thoughts. So what you are communicating on the paper is what they hear and understand, right? So you may think it's very clear, but it is not clear to the reader what you're trying to say because you have this background knowledge and the reader does not have that. So have someone else read it. Have them ask what them, what do you think my main points were? What did you learn about me from this? And then see if what they say is what you tried to communicate. And remember, they're not trying to like nitpick you or judge you. They're trying to let you know what they think you communicated, right? And they have their filter and you have your filter. But the thing is, you are trying to communicate to other people, so you really have to take into account other people's filters and think what you're communicating through those words. So have someone else read it, ask some questions, and make it better. Make it clear what your meaning is. A lot of times students try to make a really complicated sentence, and I am always like, cut it down. Make it short, make it concise, because short, concise sentences are much easier to understand. So sometimes that's what's necessary. All right, personal profile. Okay, so for any of the candidate, they call it candidate resumes, they call it a resume, candidate activity card, there's all sorts of different names, profiles, whatever. Put everything in, everything. Don't, like everything you can put in, some have check marks, some have extra space, whatever the application is, put everything you can in that doesn't go over any sort of word count. Leadership, school, church, community service, volunteer work, sports, inside of school, sports outside of school, clubs, any extra classes you take, community classes, put anything and everything you can think of. CAP, ROTC, summers, leadership awards, STEM awards, anything you can think of, put it in there, okay? Let them determine if it's worth points or not. Choir, church choir, all of it. Put everything in there, no matter how significant. Let them determine if they're going to give you points for it. If you don't put it in, you don't get a point. If you put it in and they decide to give you half a point, that's half a point. Put everything in there. All right, the one thing I also want to foot stomp is leadership and numbers. Leadership, leadership, leadership. There are so many ways you can highlight your leadership. You have to be a little more broad thinking, but you can highlight your leadership in a lot of ways. So really try and think of anything you've led, group activities, church activities. You lead your choir, you're the first chair in your band, whatever. You lead your church choir. I don't know, it doesn't really matter. Leadership is important in so many ways. And they're really looking for leaders at the academies. So any way you can highlight your leadership, that is great. Numbers, okay? You're like, numbers? All right, so let's talk about your first chair violin, right? You're in an orchestra and you lead 10 other violinists. Well, put that in. I'm first chair of 10 violinists, because it's different if you've led one person versus 10 people. It gives scope. If you've raised money for an activity, guess at about how much money you raised. So if you think about $1,000, say about $1,000. That's fine. Or put a range. If you're not sure, like maybe you want to put in you work for a certain amount of hours every month. So let's say you work 2 hours generally, and sometimes maybe 5 hours. So just make an average and say, okay, I I do 2, 2, 5, and then 2. That's like math in public. I think that's 11, right? So I work approximately 11 to 12 hours a week, or 10 to 12 hours a week, or a month, sorry. Something like that. Put a range in if you're just not quite sure, or approximate what it is. But put any sort of number, any number of people you've led, any money you've raised, work hours, hours you spend in extra clubs that are significant. I know people who do CAP, so Civil Air Patrol, and they do 40 hours a week. That's a lot. You should put that in there. That's a lot, a significant effort to one event. I know kids who do EMT, so they're actually volunteer EMT, junior EMTs, so emergency services for their town. And they spend, 200 hours in a course to be able to be certified for that. And then they spend 10 hours a week donating their time to that. That's a significant number. So you've got to put those numbers in so that people understand the significance of those numbers. So numbers are really important. Sorry, I'm foot stamping that, but that's the one thing students always leave out. All right, so there's my arrow, foot stamp, right? Transcripts. Okay, so your high school counselors and transcripts, anything. So talk to your counselor and teachers early. Letters are recommended really for the teachers, but you're going to have to, some of them require sending your transcripts by a high school counselor and that sort of thing. So talk to them early. Let them know what you're doing. Let them know you're applying to a service academy, and realize that you might have to explain what a service academy is. I actually had a school where they did not know what a service academy was, and everyone thought I was enlisting, and they didn't understand why the Air Force needed my transcripts. They're like, they don't need it, you're enlisting. I'm like, no, I'm going to a college, a university. So I really had to explain it to people. So just be patient, just understand that not everybody knows what a service academy is, and that's okay. Just be patient and try and explain to them what it is and how it works. Also, a really great tip is create a letter that you can change for each person or teacher or counselor with all the important sort of information. You can give them a hard copy of this and or send them an email so that they have what they need at their fingertips. You don't just drive by. Maybe there's a form too you have to fill out for your school. But it's also good to give them kind of some basic information. So you can tell them what's required in that letter, what they can expect. Academies often expect something written, but they expect something not just about academics. They want to know about the person's leadership. They want to know about a person's character. So those are sort of things that you can explain to them, that they don't just want to know how well I do in your math class. They want to know how well I perform in your math class as a leader, as a person. Do you trust me? Those sort of things are important, and that you should let them know that it's not their typical letter of recommendation. You want to let them know when it's due and to what sources. If you're applying to several academies, there's going to be a lot of things you have to do, like teacher and congressman, or teacher recommendations, counselor recommendations. They're going to go to your, the senators, depending, the congressman maybe. It just kind of depends. ROTC, all the academies, there's a lot. So let them know that those are coming, okay? Give them kind of an idea of, I'm applying to these things, so you'll probably see emails, because a lot of the portals are set up to send an email. You put in their email address, like your counselor's email address, and it sends it to their counselor, and then they get an email, and then they fill out the form and send it. And that way the academy knows they're directly getting in contact with the right person within your school, and it's a trusted sort of thing. So definitely, kind of explain that to them so that they can understand they're going to be receiving like 5 emails, and that they can use the same information. They just need to, write it in a Word document so they can copy and paste it into the 5 different forms they'll probably have to fill out. But that's important so they know the expectation, because you are asking a lot of teachers and counselors for this. All right, so that's kind of what, I don't want to make these too long. I have so much more to share with you all. So I want to help make your dreams come true. So please, ask questions on my YouTube channel, watch the rest of my series, subscribe, and good luck to you. Want to impress Academy admissions? Want to get that nomination? Then this is the workbook for you. Grab your step-by-step guide on Amazon today. Use the link below or search on Amazon for Service Academy admissions.